To all who come to this happy podcast, welcome to Fresh Baked Presents, a happy place where each week we combine our imagination with our experience to discuss, challenge, and explore all things Disneyland. I am Ron Berner, and with me, as always, Mr. Fresh Baked himself, the incredible David Erickson.
What's up, Fresh Baked?
And this is, of course, the Fresh Baked Presents podcast, episode 30. Thanks for joining us, where today we discuss the glaring Disneyland Resort entertainment void. And the glaring Disneyland Resort entertainment void. We reach into the mailbag to answer your questions and, of course, our 5 things Disney. David, how are you doing in this fine windy day?
I'm doing great. I'm staying indoors, so far the wind has not affected me. I'm good. How are you?
I am staying indoors as well because the wind is affecting me. It is 25-mile-an-hour gusts over in this part of the world.
I hate the wind.
I know, it's such a rarity too. So when it's wind, like, all things fall out of trees because nothing ever blows. So all of a sudden it's like dangerous to go outside. But as I said, how have you been? Tell us a fun story that happened to you this weekend in the park.
Oh my God, fun! I was actually, it wasn't really a fun story. I was only there for a little bit this weekend because I wasn't feeling well, so I didn't get to go to the park except for a couple hours. I had a chimichanga. I had a breakfast chimichanga, and then I went home.
Oh,
can you believe it?
It was a breakfast one, but no, I can. Well, that was wonderful because you got to enjoy the Masters, and I watched every single stroke because I'm a weirdo.
Yeah, I tried to watch as much as I could. I didn't watch anything Saturday, but I watched all of Sunday. Very happy for Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah, he's on a tear, but
yeah,
there's been many of those on tears before that you just
not
can't.
A tear like this.
Well, Tiger was, and
I was gonna say it's Tiger-like.
And Padraig Harrington, but nobody else does. Remember, Rory was supposed to do it, JT was supposed to do it, Jordan Spieth, where they get on this 3 or 4 amazing tournament run, and then they don't win for a long time. It's hard to do. It only takes one good guy, right? Somebody goes off on a tournament and it's over. But anyway, I didn't go to the parks either because of the Masters mainly. But the one thing that came up, as I struggled through in the opening, the glaring Disneyland Resort entertainment void. I wanted to say Resoid and void. But since we discussed last week, Disneyland President Ken Potrock, how he indicated that we're still a year away from pre-pandemic operation levels, and that's fair. So they seemingly, what we kind of thought, in part, they reset our expectations, and they are buying themselves time, among other things. So there's no griping from me as it pertains to that, which they told us. So that's way better than not. So that element was smart. But now on the heels of that, you add in the addition of what came to be that very week, next week, a little bit of a mini heat wave, if you will, that we experienced in the in-park temperatures exceeded 100 degrees. And all of a sudden, the lack of entertainment is highlighted. And it like those entertainment options that are essential to escaping the elements, recovering, and ultimately keeping guests comfortable and happy spenders. All of a sudden, that's like a potential problem. So this is all as we approach 4 months of those temperatures consistently happening on a day-to-day basis. So I thought I was going to ask you what you make of that, or how do you expect the parks, if at all, to handle this coming summer?
Well, I think things are getting better incrementally. They have been getting better in terms of entertainment for about, I don't know, I would say maybe the last 5 or 6 months, maybe since the halfway point of the reopening. We have seen stuff get brought back that I wasn't expecting. Bootstrappers came back, the Straw Hatters, Jambalaya Jazz Band. Obviously, we've got Fantasmic, World of Color, and Disneyland Forever. I mean, there are things that have been coming back, and at a very slow pace, though, which has been... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, and those are all nighttime things, which doesn't
Well,
help.
that's on my list of things that haven't come back yet. Yes, it does include daytime parades. But I mean, on the one hand, I kind of want to say, what are you doing? Because I've noticed this in the past, even pre-pandemic. Disney had a trend of cutting entertainment at anytime there was something to be cut, it was live entertainment. Go back to the Jedi Training Academy, the Newsboys, all kind. What was it? The Hook and Ladder Company. For whatever reason, they decided we don't want to do that anymore. And then it got even more exacerbated by the pandemic. I don't know if you remember, there was a whole situation at Walt Disney World where basically they just shut down live entertainment during the reopening because, and this is the other reason, it's partly Disney, but it's also partly COVID and the unions, the performers unions are they're a subset basically of the unions, and they have their own guidelines or whatever. It's the reason why we still can't hug a character, or we won't be able to until
April 18th.
Yeah, April 18th. And they have very strict requirements. I recall that the issue they were having with like the Lion King show at Disney World was, they wanted the performers to wear masks while they sang and danced on a stage, and the unions did.
Yeah.
And it didn't work. And I think that's part of the reason why we haven't seen, entertainment come back as quickly as we'd hoped. But I also do think that there's a propensity for Disney to cut that stuff whenever they feel the need to cut something. And it makes my heart sad because, like you said, it's like a void. You can feel it missing. You can feel, it's just like, in a lot of ways, when you go to Disneyland, there's these indefinable qualities to the park, and you go through there and you can't say, I can't put my finger on it, but I feel a certain way when I'm at Disneyland. I feel a certain way, ways that are different than when I go to Knott's Berry Farm or Universal or Magic Mountain or whatever. Right. And part of that is the live entertainment. It's the feeling. It's the acoustic aesthetic. It's the fact that they're there, but you don't really have to necessarily sit there and be present for it, but just hearing it as you walk down the street or in the background, and it adds a quality to the park that is unlike anything else you could do or see in a park. And it's what sets Disneyland apart, in my opinion. So when they start cutting that stuff, it makes me sad. But like I said, little by little, we're getting it back. I guess we're still a year away from getting it. Besides, I guess it's the daytime parades really that we're waiting for.
Well, I think specific to the heat that just happened, it is where do they expect human beings to retreat from the heat? Where do they expect? And I'm thinking things like, not that it's coming back, but things that are the glaring void. Star Wars Launch Bay is a massive building, and I'm not saying it's super popular. The Hyperion, obviously. Fantasyland Theater is a shade retreat, but I mean, there's something going on there.
Well, they're doing the Festival of Lion King.
The gospel or.
Well, no, that was done. That's done already.
That's done.
They're gone. Yeah. Next thing is the Lion King show.
Well, then there's of course, Royal Theater's a good retreat to get away from, and the Captain EO Tomorrowland Theater, which they never do anything there, wasted space for sure. The point being, when it was 100-degree temperatures, and I wasn't at the parks, but Twitter was going bonkers about how warm it was, and it was hot. I love it hot, but I also know that hot in the parks is a different kind of hot. Like, just think of standing at Avengers Campus or Galaxy's Edge or Toontown. I mean, those places are blazing hot because you're standing right in the middle of the sun on that concrete, which of course the concrete,
so much concrete,
it's heating up all day. So the heat is hitting you from the sun, but it's bouncing off of that. Like later, 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon, that stuff is warm. And that's what I got to thinking. I was like, there is no entertainment. That is the big void from a roundabout way, the thing that's most definably missing. And then you start thinking about it, it's like, wait a second, what are they going to do in this sweltering heat when there's no places for humans to go? And do they have something up their sleeve for the Hyperion? Do they have?
Nope.
Yeah, well, it was certainly, it would seem like the answer, does seem like how could they possibly, because A, we would have heard of it, because it's going to take a very long time for them to get something ready to actually put in there. And that goes back to they bought themselves time, right? So they bought themselves time, which means they're not going to bring back entertainment and they're not going to spend on the entertainment elements because they're waiting to launch the park full throttle next year, I guess. I don't know. It's just an interesting thing. They must have something.
We're already next year. Like, we're at that point. We shouldn't be...
Well, based on pot rock.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like, I disagree with the idea that stop messing around. Like, we're back. The park is... we should be 100%. We should. But that's yesterday or last week's conversation.
Yeah.
But you're right. You're absolutely right. It is... days like this past weekend sure do. And when it rained, too. On the rain day, same thing.
Right.
It casts a very big light on the fact that Launch Bay, the Tomorrowland Theater, Fantasyland Theater, Hyperion, Golden Horseshoe even, these are all places where people can escape to. And they're not like
Golden Horseshoe,
e-tickets.
Good call.
Yeah, they're not like well, yeah, why... I'm not going to the Golden Horseshoe for the chicken nuggets.
Right,
okay?
right. No, that's a great call. I didn't have it on my list, but that's another one. That's an absolutely perfect way to escape and get recovery and recharge. And also, an important element of this is Disney, right? Is keep you happy. People get frustrated and cranky, and that's why I asked you. They must have something in mind, right? They're not.
No, that's what I don't understand, Ron. Is that they have abandoned Launch Bay. Abandoned.
100%.
They have abandoned the Hyperion Theater. It is. I mean, they've got something going on at Fantasyland Theater, but I don't think that the show that they have planned can fill those seats. The show that they're planning to do. Matter of fact, I've heard it's less of a show than what they did out there at DCA in the World of Color stage. It's the B show of that, which was already a B show because they had cut so much of that A show.
It's so hard to believe, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, and I think the reason for that could be is that they don't want to put anything into it until they have something like a for real thing to do.
Right.
But nothing works in Launch Bay. Nothing works. I mean, nothing has worked there since America Sings. You know
right.
what I mean?
I also feel like on not a tangent, but a real thing that happens in real organizations of all sizes is when, how do I word it? When there's turmoil going on at the top, when things are not ideal, there's a little bit of a freeze or a little bit of okay, let's pump the brakes, let's slow down, let's not make like next step decisions at the moment because we need to see what's going to happen with this, that, or the other thing. Now, Chapek has 11 months left on his thing, and I do not believe there's a chance in heck that he leaves. But that's a different conversation. So maybe there is nothing slowing down things, but it certainly seems like there's slowing things down, and it's on the heels of even last week we talked about it. It's like it feels like they're buying themselves time, and now all of a sudden it feels more like that because nothing entertainment has like you, to your point and what I mentioned earlier, nothing can go into the Hyperion theater that we don't know many months in advance because of what it takes to execute on that, what it takes to pull something together and to cast it and to advertise it and to just get it operational. So
yeah. No, it's high budget, and also like we said, and I don't know if it could be COVID that's keeping because you're indoors. And you have the separate, performers unions doing whatever they're doing. I can. Having said that, I feel like they wanted to kill that show regardless of COVID. I have a feeling that the Frozen show was a net loser for them, considering the budget that thing must have, and it wasn't going over well, I don't think, right? Aladdin went over well.
Yes.
But I don't think Frozen was getting over as well as Aladdin did.
Well, you're probably right, but at that time they didn't know what they were going to put in there. Well, now they do.
Yeah.
Encanto, of course, because Encanto's going everywhere. Well, there's it's true that
That's actually not a bad. Oh my God.
it's happening,
So-
brother. It's happening. And I want the
When
world
does
to
that
know.
conversation start? When does the Encanto at the
Hyperion?
Hyperion Theater conversation start? Has it started already?
No, I
Have they-
just started it, and just
No, I mean for Disney. In the Disney
Yes.
offices.
yes, they're trying to say where can we put Encanto without overdoing it. Like you suggested, and other people I've seen suggested, it makes sense. The Tarzan's Treehouse. I don't think that's a big enough deal for them. It won't be. I don't believe the Tarzan Treehouse will be Encanto because
No, they're not doing Encanto at Tarzan.
no, and even though it makes sense and it fits, and it just in my mind it doesn't work because they have something bigger on their hands than, with all due respect, the Tarzan's Treehouse, right?
Right. No, they're not going to do it because they're going to want to reskin it, and you can't reskin Tarzan's Treehouse properly to the degree that it needs to be in order to be Antonio's wherever his.
Yeah. Well, not only that, I just don't think it's a big enough attraction to get. I think they want to
Well,
maximize.
it would be if they went 100 on it, but I don't think that they're willing to go 100 on it, and that's the thing. If that would require a major overhaul of the thing as opposed to just a light reskin. It's not a big enough attraction for Encanto if it's a light reskin. But if they went 100, they could probably make it something great. But that would require, again, budget and time, and they've already. I mean, good Lord, Tarzan's Treehouse has been down for 10 months,
Yeah.
9 months, or not? I'm
Right.
sorry, no, 6. It was September, I think. I can't remember. Has it been
September.
6 months?
I think it was September. I'm pretty sure, almost positive it was
Like
September.
7 months.
Yeah, there is
Anyway.
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, that's another thing. So you think of Pirates of the Caribbean is down a month, but that's a lot of air conditioning. And that's a lot of places to get people out of town. Granted, that was a little bit of a mini heat wave. We're not going to be dealing with that for another month or two.
Yeah. No, it's going to stay cool through June.
Yeah, as
Cool-ish.
always.
Cool
as
enough.
always. June gloom has
Yeah.
never applied more than California, I believe. That is
Yeah.
so true. That is definitely true. I don't know. I do think Encanto at the Hyperion would be a good idea just to get another something in there. I still think Encanto's getting an attraction, if not a freaking land. I'm convinced. And I want credit for it when it happens because I said it before the entire world said it after Chapek, after he botched the film release and then all of a sudden claimed, look at my franchise.
Yeah.
Wait a second. If you had a franchise, you're not putting it on Disney Plus and telling the world that you're not putting it in a theater for the 30-day required and saying, don't worry, you're going to get it on Disney Plus in 30 days and waste all the revenue that you would have had if you knew you had a hit. And that since you do, and since you need to do, this is CEO legacy stuff again, and you need something in the park, he's going to add something in the park, and I guarantee it's Encanto. And that's going to be fun. I'll get on it.
Hard for me. It's hard for me though to get excited about that.
Oh,
Ron.
sure.
I want to, but it's hard for me to get excited about anything that's going on at the Hyperion because I just feel like it's such. It's not. I don't like it.
Well, then what do they do
like
with
the
it?
Hyperion Theater?
That's just it, though. Is what I agree with you. I think we've talked about Frozen before. I went in Frozen on two separate occasions, and something, I don't know what, went wrong. There's like 20-minute delays, and it's already a long show. And it's like, oh my goodness gracious!
You're
So
investing a solid 2 hours in Frozen.
that was a lot, and I wasn't on par for that because I'm way too stir crazy. I couldn't handle it at a theme park at Disneyland or DCA. So I guess a couple things. The heat element is a real thing when that blazing sun and people want to get out of it. So a shorter show or multiple things in there, whatever. That's one thing. But the other thing is if they don't do anything with it, which they seemingly don't want to do with it, then what do they do with the entire building? Like it's just.
Well, that's what I'm saying, and that's where the inaction comes from, or that's why we get to the point where we are with that and with Launch Bay, because unless they've got something that they can really get behind, that they're really passionate about, and they're willing to put money and a budget behind, they're not going to do anything. It's all or nothing. They're doing tent poles only these days when it comes to attractions, right? They don't do small attractions. They don't do small things anymore. It's kind of it bums me out. I think we talked about this, and they forgot how to make a small dark ride. They forget how to do these things. Launch Bay. Why put even a single dollar into Launch Bay if you know nobody's going to show up? If you know it's going to suck? If it's not going to have any sort of, gravity to it?
Yeah.
And so you might as well. That's the microcosm of Tomorrowland, really.
Right. Well, we said the Tomorrowland Theater is another space. I know, it's crazy, right? It really is crazy because you think that they would just throw something crappy in there. Like, you know what I mean?
They did. They did High School the Musical was there. That
Right.
whole thing. Which, I mean, I bitched like a. Are you kidding me? You're gonna put High School the Musical in the Tomorrowland Theater? What are you doing?
I know.
You know.
I will say I appreciate. I know it's so trashy, but it feels better to me to throw something trashy in there than to leave spaces so vacant.
Is it though?
I feel.
I've often
fake
said
it. Fake it.
I would rather have a vacant dirt lot than the Hollywood back lot. I would rather because at least that's potential. At least I can see the future. But you leaving Launch Bay the way it is, Hyperion, the backlot, leaving those locations the way they are as just husks, all it does is remind me of how useless those things are and that they're just not good,
No.
So the Hyperion, I feel like I don't think they can tear it down, but at the same time, I can't think of a single thing that would get me excited about whatever it is in Launch Bay 2. And so that's why I think it's why there's why they drag their feet, why they kick the can,
right,
and stuff like that.
Well, that's because certainly, as it relates to Tomorrowland, that's just they can't piecemeal Tomorrowland together. They have to bulldoze it because of all the elements that we talked about in terms of the launch bay, right? Like they can't take down just the launch. I mean, I suppose they could, but if they're going to those lengths, do you think that that's when Autopia comes into play and that's when they deal with the lagoon, the people mover tracks and things like, you know what I mean? It's such a grand scale that little project.
I this is probably a little tangent, but
we love tangents on this show.
I'm already in the headspace. I'm prepared to lose Tomorrowland. In my head, I am prepared for it to happen all at once.
Rename it. That's the problem, is the name. They have to call it something else, and they never will.
Well, no, but I'm not even married to that. You know what? People get all hung up on Tomorrowland. It's not tomorrow. It's yesterland. Whatever. Okay, fine. Who cares? It's not California Adventure either.
Right.
Like it doesn't mean anything. But I don't think that you can do justice. You can't make something good, no matter what it is. You can't make a new Tomorrowland good unless you really, really go for it. And the only way that you can really, really go for it is if you tear it down to the studs.
Right.
And you like you said, sure, Launch Bay sucks, and there's nothing. You can't put anything in Launch Bay.
Right. Exactly.
You can't put something else in there. It's the most ill-equipped building for anything besides nothing.
Right.
I mean, like I said, America Sings was like the last thing that ever worked there. And even that didn't work because obviously they closed it. So that was dying as well.
But it was beloved, and we might talk about that in This Week in Disney History.
Oh, awesome. Good.
I was going to skip it, but not now.
Yeah. But I just feel like if you're going to do it, if you're going to do something with Launch Bay, then just go ahead and do what you're going to do with Star Tours and all that. I'm ready for a brand new Tomorrowland. It doesn't have to be the future. Right. I don't care. It doesn't have to. You can call it Tomorrowland and not put Tomorrowland in there. I don't care. I just want it good.
Totally agree with that. I don't even think of it as Tomorrowland in terms of like when the new Tomorrowland comes. Of think of it as Tomorrowland attractions. I just think of it as like a new land, new things coming in. But yes, continue to call it Tomorrowland. It's definitely
call it whatever you want.
Right. It's definitely the adult theme park version of square peg round hole. It's like like that hole that is Tomorrowland. They are refusing to break anything down and knock anything over. They're just trying to like shoehorn something in there that doesn't work, and nothing ever has worked. And it's so much wasted spaces. I mean, it is a ghost town. Granted, I'm there at 8:00 in the morning, but it is such a ghost town going through there. It's just that's why we wipe it out so fast.
It's funny you said that because I was gonna say, why should they change it? Because people are still going to Tomorrowland. You're just going to 8 a.m. You're hitting Tomorrowland early, but you go there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you'll be impressed. Well, you'll be impressed with how many people are there.
I mean, Space Mountain and it has to be all Space Mountain because there's nothing else there. Nothing else is operational except for Astro Blasters Astro Orbiter and Star Tours. Nothing else. That whole, oh, I guess Autopia is back there, but outside of that, you're
Monorail too.
Monorail.
This
Yeah.
is too hot.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. The whole thing is just curious, and I like to think. So to your point, yes, the Main Street. There are things coming back and things are creeping back, but they're nighttime spectaculars. And I don't mean to say "but" as in they lose value. Yeah. I just mean to say that doesn't solve any issue that they're going to have with sweltering days for 4 months. Sweltering days. There's no shade protection. There's no place to. I should say no. There's limited shade protection as it is, and then they have these retreats that have often been, a lot of bodies can go into them, and I would go into them just to cool off. And I love the heat. So imagine the people that don't love the heat as much as I do. What are they going to do? Because just being outside in the heat, even if you're in the shade, you're still outside in the heat.
Yep.
So I don't know. I would like to think that would disappoint me among. I don't say that I'm disappointed with Disney on a lot of things. The complete disregard of some sort of cooling, building, entertainment, indoor entertainment. But then again, what are they going to do?
It's so true. When you look at all the things, all the things in the park that are vacant. Every one of them is a show building,
and air conditioned.
Yeah, even like, God, you could even take it to what do you call it? Stage 17. Is that what it's called? Studio 17,
yeah.
Stage 17. I don't know. And then, that's just a gift shop. That's just an enormous gift shop now. They used to do a thing over there at the other stage across the way where Captain Marvel's jet used to be. It's gone now. Even those are just vacant buildings, more or less. They haven't given us. They've been taking away escape for a long time now. For a long time.
They've been taken away, and they're creating dangerous conditions. Frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad. It's crazy. It's like I'm so naive. I'm thinking they must know how hot it is there, and that there's just not a lot of places to go away and get and escape it. I don't know, but then again, there's just would they open the Hyperion to let people go in there to eat? Would they be willing to do somehow offer a place for people to get out of the sun?
You know what they should do in the case of the Hyperion is just straight up show a movie.
Right.
Put a screen up there and just show something to give people, like you said, it doesn't have to run all year, but at times, the hot season or the rainy season, whenever that is, when you, in the same way that we were talking about, they should do something at the Tomorrowland Theater. It wouldn't be too difficult, I don't think, to drop a screen down there and just project a show on there and let people cool off for an hour.
Project a show and have tables where they can eat and drink and tend to their children.
Well, there's no room for tables though. I mean, it's theater seating. It's like
the Hyperion
movie theater.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking of the waiting area. I remember the waiting area, but yeah, you're right. Exactly.
Well, they do have tables out there.
Yeah.
In the waiting area right now, that's your overflow for Pims. I eat all my meals.
Oh no, that's the Hyperion. I'm talking about Tomorrowland as well. That's a theater, but they're both theaters once you get inside of them.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. It is interesting, and like I said, on the heels of President Ken Potrock, Disneyland president, I should say. That sounded very weird.
Yeah.
Saying we're a year away, and then it was like, okay, fine, that's fine. They said that, and then it is what it is. All of a sudden, it gets the sweltering heat when we know that there's more of that to come. And then you start thinking, you're like, man, that is an interesting thing. So we shall see, I guess, because what are they going to do? They're going to be dealing with heat strokes. That's what they're going to be doing. So anyway, is there any entertainment options or topics that was indoors, outdoors that we didn't touch on, that I didn't mention, that you want to bring up?
Yeah, we kind of touched on it a little bit, but daytime parades. If we're talking about entertainment, what are you doing?
Especially,
obviously, that doesn't help you get out of the heat. It actually puts you in the heat. But I'm a little. What's the word I'm looking for?
perplexed.
I'm not good with the fact that we don't have a daytime parade. We've earned it.
We have, and it doesn't make sense because we've talked about this before as well. They have things in the can. They have things in the backlot or storage or wherever you want to call it.
Magic happens.
Magic
happens in storage.
Exactly.
It's just sitting there. Why?
And that thing didn't run very long. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Is it doesn't make any sense, especially when they talk about we have all but 2,000 of our employees back. Well, is that what they did? The parade?
Yeah, those 2,000 employees must be the performers in Magic Happens.
It doesn't make sense. I think there's more meat on that bone. And again, there's not a lot more meat on that bone until we get answers, and that may be coming up. We're still, that we have Pot Rock to follow up on his whatever he was calling
the April thing,
the end of April thing.
State of Disneyland.
The State of Disneyland. So I'll be looking forward to that very much so because I'm now thinking that they're certainly going to have to address that or just ignore it, I guess, and just say, sorry, it's hot outside. If it's too hot, don't go to the parks. That's why we're not letting everybody in anyway. Blah, blah, blah. So anyway, this week in Disney history, David, I will actually start with one that I wasn't even going to do because of time constraints. I thought, well, I'll scratch it. But you mentioned it, so I'll mention it because it was this week in Disney history. America Sings closes in the Carousel Theater in Tomorrowland after running since 1974. The narrator was Sam the Eagle, periodically interrupted by a pesky weasel, taking the place of the Carousel of Progress when that attraction was moved to Walt Disney World. It featured over 100 characters in a history of American popular music in 4 separate scenes, each from a different era. The audience moved in turn to each of the scenes. When the attraction closed, many of the audio animatronics characters that had populated it were moved to Critter Country as, of course, part of Splash Mountain. America Sings, David, is fondly remembered by Disneyland guests, according to D23.
I agree. I miss it.
I miss it too. I remember it, and that was one of the question I had for you is, did you recall that? Because I do.
Yeah. Yeah, I was obviously young. It's one of the few memories that I do have of going to Disneyland as a kid was seeing that show and enjoying it. And I remember being completely impressed with the fact that the building moved around in a circle like that. I thought that was the coolest damn thing. Now you got me wishing I could see America Sings. Damn you, Ronnie.
Yeah, I remember too, because all my memories are childhood stuff, and they're all heartfelt things. Yeah. It was great, and again, I always went with my grandma, so the things that she loved is what they make me. As an adult, I'd be like, but as a kid, I'm like, oh, I love it so much. This week in Disney history continues where it was supposed to begin, with openings in theater. The Mickey Mouse film, Mickey's Kangaroo, opened this week in 1935. Mickey is happily building Pluto's doghouse when a box from Australia arrives containing a boxing kangaroo named Hoppy. And as it turns out, her son Joey. While Mickey initially takes pleasure in teaching Hoppy how to box, their antics make Pluto's life miserable, whose thoughts, interestingly, are spoken out loud. Naturally, by the end, all are great friends. This hilarious short has the distinction of being the final black and white Disney cartoon.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, super cool. Imagine that, Pluto's thoughts. I feel like I've probably seen it, but to think of it off the top of my head, I'm like, wow, what does his thoughts sound like even?
Yeah.
The Donald Duck film Donald's Nephews opened this week in 1938. And in doing so, gifted the world Huey, Dewey, and Louie in their screen debut. And we learn on a postcard sent to Donald that the angelic trio belongs to Donald's sister, Dumbella, if I pronounce that correctly. In Donald's Nephews, the havoc-wreaking trio who were first introduced to the world just 6 months earlier in print on the Donald Duck Sunday comic page. Annoyed Donald almost to the point of an apoplectic seizure, leaving his house in ruins. At the end of the film, Donald consults his child psychology book and reads that children are only angels without wings. so angering Donald that he shreds the book and goes into a volcanic rage. I love Donald so much.
Is that real? Or her name is Dumbella?
Dumbella, Dumbella. I should have looked up how to pronounce
like
it, but
Dumbella
Dumbella to me. Right, and it's like didn't ring a bella.
Yeah.
So that was so interesting, and I just love Donald. How he's he really is in so many cartoons, especially with Daisy. He's the sweetest thing, and the nephews. He's always trying to help them and teach them. He's the sweetest thing in the world. He's also volatile, and I love him so much.
Yep.
While every Disney Magic Kingdom style theme park has an Alice in Wonderland attraction, only Disneyland has an Alice themed dark ride, which originally opened in 1958. The attraction was originally planned to be part of Disneyland's opening day festivities 3 years earlier, but those plans were scratched due to budgeting issues. This week in 1983, as part of a refurbishment of Fantasyland, Alice in Wonderland was reimagined, and Disney legend Catherine Beaumont, who voiced Alice in the film, lent her voice to the new narration. At that same time, the Mad Tea Party attraction was moved from the rear of Fantasyland to a location next to Alice in Wonderland. Is that one of the better dark rides, would you say, at Disneyland?
Alice in Wonderland?
Yeah.
I mean, they're all kind of I love them all like a little bit the same, but it's almost, I feel like it's a different set because it's so new compared to the other ones.
That is true. I actually have the same sentiments. It is interesting how maybe it's location, but Alice aside from Peter Pan, Alice seems to always have a 10-minute longer line than all the rest. So
yeah, what's up with that?
At least that. And I don't know. It's an of all the dark rides, I would say besides Peter Pan, that's the one we probably hit the least. We hit it very often. But every other one is almost a walk-on. Even Snow White is pretty quick, 20 minutes. So it's just an interesting thing I've always noticed about that ride. But I agree. They all
nobody ever complains about the length of the wait for Alice, even though it's pretty much the same as Peter Pan.
Right, but Peter Pan wait, it lies. It's add 15 minutes to it, and I'm
You
going
wouldn't
to
know
my.
that because you don't go on the ride. I've been in there. It's
I
it's
do,
not so
and,
bad.
and every time I do it, I time it because I've been saying this forever. Tahitian Terrace Adventureland restaurant at Disneyland closed this week in 1993. A Polynesian-themed show entertained diners during construction in 1962. Walt was a little dismayed by the short height of the man-made tree that forms the backdrop for the small stage. When his designers were baffled as to how to rectify the problem, Walt posed the obvious solution. Just slice the tree horizontally in the center, raise the top to the desired height, and fill in the trunk space with more cement. The designers were actually thinking of it as a real tree and had been pondering how they could raise the entire thing. The restaurant became Aladdin's Oasis in 93, of course, tied to the release of Aladdin. And in 2018, it became Tropical Hideaway.
Thank goodness.
I was just going to say Aladdin's Oasis or Tropical Hideaway, David.
Aladdin's Oasis was the biggest waste of prime real estate that I could think of. It was Aladdin's. I mean, it was nice. It was good looking, but there was no. I mean, obviously, you need a restaurant there. That's perfect.
They shoehorn. It's so funny you said that. I oftentimes edit this type of stuff, and I would say they don't need to know that it opened at the same time as the release of Aladdin. But in this particular case, I included it. I added it because I agree 100% that they just needed to once again shoehorn something in there to try to generate buzz. But aside from that, I just think of when I read this and started putting it together. Walt was just such a solutions man, and I've read many books. And he had an answer for everything. There was always a problem that presented itself, and he just, whether he was right or not, it didn't matter. He didn't even stumble. He had an answer. Yeah. He always just had an answer. I've always found that so fascinating. Never felt like there was any thinking about it. It was just kind of like identify problem, fix problem. That's so great. Okay, where are we now? We are now at the Disney Channel. Began broadcasting for the first time this week in 1983 with 18 hours of programming per day. In 1986, the Disney Channel went to a full 24 hours. The channel became one of the fastest growing pay cable services, reaching over 35 million subscribers after a little over a decade on the air. In 93, the channel began a transition from premium to basic cable, eventually expanding its reach to over 80 million homes in only 3 years. The Disney Channel officially dropped "the" from its name in 97 to become Disney Channel. By January 2019, it encompassed 47 Disney channels available in 33 languages worldwide. And isn't that funny how that journey sounds eerily similar to that of Disney Plus? Yeah. And I was going to ask you, do you remember the Disney Channel launch, or at least when you first discovered it, and what show do you remember or were you into?
Well, I definitely remember it. I remember the question was, do you get the Disney Channel? That was always a conversation that people had, like, because as you said, it wasn't free. It wasn't part of paid cable originally.
Right.
Do you get the Disney Channel? Do you have the Disney Channel? That was a conversation. I don't. It was a little bit after my time. I was 14, so I mean, I wasn't a kid. I was a teenager. So, not a lot of teenagers, in high school, my time, were watching a lot of Disney Channel, I don't think. So I don't remember actually a lot of the shows that were on. Nothing comes to mind that I can think about, although I know that's where a lot of the stars that we know today, even today, come from. They've grown out of those,
right?
Timberlakes and all that.
They that was the Masterpiece Theater show, Mouser-Size show, reruns of the Zorro show, Epcot magazine show, You and Me Kid, New, Animal World, Welcome to Pooh Corner, The Scheme of Things, and Contraption were their main shows that when they first began. And I agree with you that it was very kid at that time. It was very kid oriented, and I was 11 when this came. And to your point, did you have the Disney Channel, or did you get the Disney Channel? I don't believe we did, or I don't know if we did. I don't know, because I was only 11. But I can tell you that I distinctly remember one show, and I had to look it up because I didn't know what it was called, because I remember I was hooked on a Treasure Island show. So it was Long John Silver and it was Treasure Island. So I had to look it up. It was Return to Treasure Island, was a miniseries that came out in '86, and of course that's when Disney became, for all of us could have. It was a 10-hour miniseries, and I remember being so hooked on that. And at that time, I loved Return to Treasure Island and another show. Do you remember Voyage of the Mimi? Which is not it's not a Disney show. It was another about a ship. Ben Affleck was actually in it. Nobody's ever heard of this thing. It's like it's another miniseries. I know. But I just remember that age of being so hooked on that kind of a thing, and of course, so many Disney movies. Soon to follow. So, and speaking of Disney movies, this is going to be a fun one for you and I, because this conversation has come up over the years, and including the very first time we met. 1998 Disney legend Hayley Mills captured our hearts the moment she first appeared on the screen in Pollyanna. Her unaffected and naturally expressive acting style made her an instant favorite among audiences in her American film debut. Although this wasn't her first film, it was her role as Pollyanna, the girl who sees the world through rose-colored glasses, that led her down to the path to superstardom. Her performance as Pollyanna won her the Academy Award this week in 1961 for the most outstanding juvenile performance of 1960. After Pollyanna, Hayley went on to star in many other classic Disney films consecutively, beginning with doubling her charm and starring as both twins, Sharon and Susan, in The Parent Trap, followed by In the Search of the Castaways, and my personal favorite called Summer Magic, The Moon Spinners, and That Darn Cat. She was in many others as well, but she had that five consecutive movie run. And the funny thing is, it wasn't Walt who discovered Hayley, but his wife Lillian, who took notice of her in the 1959 film Tiger Bay, in which she appeared with her father, John Mills, who played the father in the classic Disney film Swiss Family Robinson. Walt agreed and later called Hayley Mills the greatest movie find in 25 years. Hayley once recalled her first meeting with Walt, who at the time was seeking the perfect youngster to star as Pollyanna. Hayley said, "I went to Walt's suite at the Dorchester Hotel in London, along with my parents, my younger brother, and our Pekingese Suki. Walt laughed a lot as he spoke, in a rather shy way, which I found very endearing. I think that's what made me warm to him. That and the fact that he liked childish things. I remember he and I were crawling around the floor after Suki, who was eating potato crisps off the carpet. Thoughts on Walt being Walt and Pollyanna in general?
Well, Pollyanna, that's the one where with the horrible ending, right?
Well, yes, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. That's what you think, yes.
I remember watching Pollyanna because you talked about it. I'm like, I have to check out this Pollyanna movie because Ronnie won't shut up about it. And I'm like, what in the world just happened at the end of this movie? My God. I don't want to give it away. Spoiler alert, but.
Right, 1961. Yeah, so the reason. So that is funny. I do remember that. And she was just naive. She just chipper. Super chipper. She changed a cantankerous town, and she was so infectious that she changed the entire town. But the reason I bring it up, well, I don't bring it up, it was this week in Disney history, but a thing that I thought was funny was, I don't know if you recall, but in the email I wrote you, I professed my first love as being Hayley Mills. When you reached out about having looking for fresh baked proper help way back years ago now. And I responded because we had met several times at that point. We had met a few times, and I just wrote to you. And I remember incorporating that little Hayley Mills line, not knowing how into Disney film and history you were. But based on that, who was your first childhood or TV film crush?
Oh, my. You know what? I'm trying. I'm going to say Pippi Longstocking was one. I loved Pippi Longstocking when I was young. That's the only thing that's something that comes to mind. But well, I never saw Pollyanna when I was young, so I couldn't speak to that.
Yeah, I just said, I lied to you. That's what I was going to say. I wanted to ask you first. I lied to you in that email to get the job. But my first love, believe it or not, was Drew Barrymore. E.T. We're exactly the same age. So Drew Barrymore's entire career, because we're not exactly the same age, like a couple months apart, but the same age. And my mom was teasing me in a drive-in movie theater. We're watching E.T. and she was teasing me about the little girl my age and all this kind of stuff. Like, look how cute she is, Ronnie, or whatever. And it's stuck in my head. So then from that moment, I kind of had a crush on her, and then followed like her career forever. Isn't that? It's just one of those funny things that you never forget. And I did love Hayley Mills as well. And I love The Parent Trap, and I definitely love Summer Magic with Burl Ives. This week in Disney history just happened, so now it's mail time. Mail time. David. This comes from Rebecca Bree. Thank you very much for the question. Very good question. If you had to, what Disney or Pixar movie would you pick to be remade as a live action?
Well, I decided to get cruel with my answer on this one, because kind of like the way I answered the Space Mountain or the turning an attraction into a movie. I think Toy Story, because I think it's impossible. I want to see somebody try to make Toy Story happen as live action, because I don't think you can do it. I just don't think it can be done.
That is true. I completely agree. That would almost defeat the purpose. But
I want to see somebody go for it. I want to see what would the result be. I'm just so curious.
The result would be so CGI. It would be awful. It makes me think of Night at the Museum, but Night at the Museum is more believable. Oh, yeah. But you're right. I totally agree. I don't want to see that at all. My answer is anything that does not include animals, because I don't want to see any more live action animals. Oh, yeah. But I honestly picked the Black Cauldron. This is a very popular thing. I've heard about this for 100 years, where if they're going to do live action, I've long said Pinocchio, which they are doing, and I look very much forward to that, especially with Tom Hanks and Zemeckis. The thing that scares me with Pinocchio is it's such a rich story with so much that goes into it, that if it's not just so delicately handled, it could fail miserably. But if done correctly and done properly, it can be magical. So we shall see. I like the people who are involved, so I'm excited for it. But I picked the Black Cauldron because it's just a dark story, and I like just think of it almost as a Game of Thrones or Dungeons and Dragons in a Disney-fied kind of a way. So there's a lot of fun that could be had with that. And the animation is underrated, not seen often, not even thought of as being that good or that popular. But so it'd be a good story, I think, that would work for live action.
That's an actual movie, The Black Cauldron. I think you could make that movie as live action. You could. Oh, wait, weren't they talking about it?
Well, maybe. I've heard this conversation when it comes up for live action regarding the Black Cauldron Forever. So they very well may have it.
I want to say Disney Plus. There was talk of a Black Cauldron movie for Disney Plus, but I can't remember if I got it right or not.
Yeah, probably. My brain is jelly bean jar, right? There's only so many jelly beans that you can fit in there before others have to spill out. So I'll just take your word for it. But I don't know. And it sounds like a good idea if they do. Daniel Diaz wants to know, David, if you could take one item from the park home with you, what would it be?
There's 1,000 things I'd like to take home for me from the park. But I guess if I had to pick a thing, I was like, in my mind, I'm walking around the park and what would I really like to have that's realistic? I do have a thing for like models, like trains and kind of like Walt. So I would go for something in Storybook Land. I thought maybe Cinderella's, the pumpkin coach that's up on the hill, maybe, or just that whole mountain, really, or even Snow White's cottage on the opposite side, or little cottage on the right side of the Storybook Land boats. But I mean, just anything. Toad Hall would be awesome. I would like any of those things from Storybook Land.
Yeah, that is such a great choice. That's so good. And what's so interesting is my choice was thinking of the Disneyland story. They have all the historical, all the things at the like the Opera House, I guess, and like the Disneyland model, like the Disneyland, but it's so outrageously large and everything. So I would literally take anything inside of there. The Disneyland map. I mean, that's the kind of thing I'd even put on the ceiling or a whole wall. Yeah. And pretty much anything in there. A hand-drawn Mickey signed by Walt, like things like that would be.
Well, that's something you could buy, though.
Right. I mean, I suppose you could, but I'm sure that's 6+ figures. I mean.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But something that's on the walls in there would be amazing. Anything, but that's a great choice that you had. How cool would that be? Miniatures are super cool. David, what are some Disneyland or Disney in general things that you really grew to appreciate? Ryan Prieto asks us.
Spinners.
Spinners.
Mostly, yeah, spinner rides. Mostly Astro Orbiter. Astro Orbiter, Dumbo, and even Emotional Whirlwind. These are attractions that I wouldn't have given the time of day to back in the day, but I love Astro Orbiter now. I mean, it still makes me nauseated when I ride it about, by halfway through. Dumbo, not so much. But I don't I've really grown to love Astro Orbiter, especially. Maybe it's the views, I'm not sure, but
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, but it's. I mean, I've really come to enjoy spinners, even though I get motion sickness. But I've so when it answered like what have I come to appreciate? Spinner rides.
So you hate
the fact that
you don't like screens and you don't like spinners. You have a rough day at the parks, man.
Yeah, I can't, dude. How do I do DCA ever?
Well, there are screens on many more rides than not than you realize, but I'm just saying if you were to actually put pen to paper on how many digital screens there are in both parks added up, there's a lot. And if you want to count things like Peter Pan,
right.
So it's interesting. It's kind of one of those questions. You can poke holes in anything. You can find imperfections in anything. So what do I mean by like what do I grow to appreciate? So coming from a clean slate, first going to the parks, first getting back into it, when you're not thinking about the big picture, you're just taking everything for granted, I guess. There's so many things. Cast members, cleanliness, the evolution of the park, the Disney trying new things, the food and drink creativity. That, I mean, it's not high level at the moment, but they do when they actually dive into it. The food is excellent. The secret menu, I think, is cool. Yeah. So I just appreciate, and I grew to appreciate those things that I originally took for granted. I didn't think anything of. Like a cast member to me, it's just somebody that worked at Disneyland. You didn't realize it until all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, this is very different than employees at most places. And then you're like, that is cool, and you really learn to appreciate it. So I kind of took it from a clean slate where I was like unaware of it, and all those things. Spinners is an interesting one though. I do like spinners, and I do because of the view. But Emotional Whirlwind makes no sense to me whatsoever. Put a bathroom there, like it just doesn't make sense.
I still like it.
I don't like it at all. Disney 5 things Disneyland, David, and
all right.
And Rebecca Bree also offered this top 5 underrated things to do at the parks. And of course, underrated, overrated, worth, or those words are just, I don't even know what they mean, but top 5 underrated things to do at the parks, in your opinion.
This was an easy one for me because I live in these areas. I do all the things that people, don't commonly do because they're underrated, because as an annual pass holder, we fill in the blanks around the park, right? And so my number 5 is Redwood Creek Challenge. I love Redwood Creek. I've said it before. Like every time I go there, when I'm on video and I film myself, I'm like, this is the most underrated thing in the entire park. At least in DCA, but it's making my whole resort list as well.
Right.
Redwood Creek Challenge is amazing. It's a total distraction. It's like going to Tom Sawyer's Island a little bit in terms of they take you away. So they do such a good job of taking you away from the rest of the park. And I love climbing and running across the bridges and all that stuff. I think it's great. And as a kid, oh my God, I would go nuts in that place.
I feel like I should just move right along and avoid the hate mail I would get by saying, I just don't get it. I don't get Redwood Creek Challenge at all. If it was somewhere, if it was at a park, a neighborhood park, it would be amazing. But in the resort, it just doesn't make sense to me as well. Like I never go there. I never go. Again, when I'm there and when I'm looking at it, I appreciate it and I like it all. But that thing in a theme park is just such an interesting thing for me.
That's the whole point of a theme park, is to take you to a different time and place.
I guess, but then why don't they have laser tag in there? Why don't they have an escape room?
It's the Redwood Forest, Ron.
No, I'm saying why don't they get rid of Soarin' California and have laser tag? Why don't they have a miniature golf
I got you. Yeah.
But it is cool. I always want trees. I always like the outdoor. The history, they tell you all the stuff. It's cool. It's just it's such a weird thing for me to reconcile with. But I knew you were going to say that. That's why I was smirking and went right out of the gates. You came up with.
Well, I've said it on video before. Yeah.
Right. And I know you like it. And I don't dislike it, but again, it's just a little different. My number 5 is Animation Academy. Because I think there was a lot of things I could have put on the list and that I kept coming up with, but the things I came up with that are actually cool that I feel like underrated because I'm not sure, to your point, like the masses are aware of it or the masses have actually done it.
Well, that's underrated.
Yeah, and that would make it underrated if it's just a lower volume of people are actually in there doing it. But once you're in there and you see it, and like there's the teaching lessons that are going on, and just the vibe that's in there, it's just talk about a good place to go cool off as well. Yeah. And then you have your little kiddos, and then they're teaching you how to draw different characters at different times, and you get to keep it. It's a cool thing. It's a cool experience, and I'm really glad that they do it because that's kind of the heart where Disney really came from originally. So I think it's cool. I'm a big fan of it.
That whole building is a great way to spend an hour out of the elements between Crush and the Sorcerer's Workshop.
They have multiple things in there as well. Yes.
Okay. My number 4. If you like Redwood Creek Challenge, then you certainly will like Tom Sawyer's Island. I mentioned that in the first one, but every time I go on Tom Sawyer's Island, I'm like, again, I feel like I'm being taken away. It's so removed from everything else, the hustle and bustle. And it's as a kid, I could go nuts in there. But as an adult, I love it too. I just love walking around and feeling the energy that's on that place, going across the bridges and stuff. And I especially love the view of New Orleans Square from the Fantasmic stage. I could sit there and watch that and meditate on that for, I don't know. I've done it. I've just sat there, at the checkers table for 30 minutes and drank a Sprite and just relax.
And watching the
Not
alternating Columbia and Twain go by.
Oh, and then watching the boat traffic go by, it's so fantastic. I When you get to the back part of the island, things start to get really quiet, and then all you can hear is the smokestack, the steam, coming off the Mark Twain. That's Disneyland for me. I mean, that's Disneyland.
For sure, for sure. That's a very cool spot. I might mention it. All right, we'll see. My number 4, Candy Palace. Watch them make candy.
Oh, yeah.
It is so cool. It just is so cool. Whether you spend 1 minute there or 10 minutes there, they're masters at it. They're doing it all day long. It's kind of like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory right live. Like, it's just so super cool. Caramel apples, no matter what they're doing, the process that they go through, watching things solidify, like liquid chocolate solidify on things. I don't know. I just think it's a really fascinating thing to look at. And of course, the cast members are so amazing. They usually nod to you. They enjoy it. It's a fun thing to show. Certainly it's something that I like to show people for walking by and I know have never seen it or I know are new to the parks. Like, oh, you have to come and just take a peek at this. This is really cool.
Good choice. I like that. That was more of a small scale thing that I probably I missed some of those things. I think when I was
3.
Number 3 for me is basically any Main Street vehicle. Taking your time and riding a vehicle up Main Street as an attraction, as a thing to do, is highly underrated. People are always in a hurry to get in a queue somewhere, and they forget, because this is coming from a person who's going to Disneyland for maybe different reasons than everybody else. I don't know. But I feel like that's the best way, in my opinion, one of the best ways to get into the spirit of Disneyland is by getting on a Main Street vehicle. More people need to do that.
Once again, another really good call. My number 3.
Your thunder.
No, it's interesting because of the underrated element, right? It was like, I don't want to get heat for this, but I might, because there's a few things that are not that I wanted to put on here that are, I don't know if they're underrated or not, but I feel like they are, that I didn't put. But anyway, I digress. Number 3, Tom Sawyer's Island. Find a spot. Really, this applies to anywhere in the park, I would say, but I did put that as a specific spot. I've often said I sit in the car on where the Pirates of the Caribbean is, like the cool air is coming up for me on the other side. But just find a spot, take it all in, look around. People watch, and I don't mean judgy people watch. I mean watch happiness. It's so infectious. It's so cool. You hear things, you see people smiling at each other. It's just it is such a great thing to do, to just kick back and just take it all in. We sometimes, like you just mentioned on Main Street, we just sometimes just fly by racing somewhere without actually taking it all in. And I find that could easily be number 1. The most underrated thing to do in the park is not taking it all in.
Yeah.
Number 2.
For sure. Number 2, I mean, if you know me, you know I love this, Casey Jr. I don't think that this is an attraction that gets enough love, but again, it's coming from a place where I'm trying to pick up whatever it is that Walt's putting down. Like that's the energy I try to have when I'm in the park. I try to appreciate the park for, just what it is. And when I'm on Casey Jr., I'm never happier. I'm never more in Disneyland. I'm never more connected to the park and to Walt. Casey Jr., it gets skipped because it just seems like a kid's ride. It's not. It's Disneyland. It is Disneyland.
It is, and you will get crammed in a cage with another family if you're not careful.
Well, you can wait. I've waited turns before. I'm like, I'm not getting in a cage, so I'll stand over here and I'll wait for the next train.
I know, it's fun. We do it. We hit it often because it's like you said. There's almost always a 5-minute ride. So when we wiped out Fantasyland, we start headed towards Galaxy's Edge or towards Big Thunder. And as we're exiting Pinocchio and we're looking, it's like, okay, it's only 5 minutes. We're gonna do Casey again, or also. My number 2, the Disneyland story. I think if you have any interest in what the park is all about, what Disney's all about, just going through the big, moments with Mr. Lincoln, like that whole building. So if you're going through there and you're just walking through, we mentioned it earlier, the Disneyland the map is there, all the old school stuff. There's pictures of Walt, there's behind the scenes stuff. There's so much great things about the park being built. There's just all these really little subtle things that are about the history of Disney and the history of Disneyland, like on display, like a photo album. Very, very, very cool if you have any interest whatsoever. And I love it. And I often, these are the type of things I do when I go to the park by myself. But I just kind of peruse through there slowly, just kind of look at everything, reread everything over and over again. It's something that really interests me, and something that I think if anybody has any interest in Disney at all and they don't know about it, or they haven't actually gone through to do it, it's worth taking the time, because it's history, like right there. Like it's almost touching. You're like, my God, I can't believe what I'm looking at right in front of my face. Oh my gosh, it's super cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I forget to go in there many times. I forget because, and like you said, it's just. By the way, great place to get out of the elements.
It really is.
And watch a little show. Go to the Lincoln show while you're at it if you're there, because that's same thing. It's underrated in my opinion. I know a lot of people who make it a point.
Yeah, and there's things to look at on the exit of Lincoln too. So as you exit, there's things on that side you can see that you wouldn't normally go back to be able to see.
Yeah.
Number one, David,
so,
grand finale.
Yeah, number one. You might appreciate this because you kind of alluded to it a minute ago. You kind of almost as if like you shouldn't do it, but I did. My number one underrated thing to do at Disneyland is absolutely nothing. No agenda, no rides, no nothing. Just be present in Disneyland. That have nowhere to go, and use your eyes and your ears and your heart, and just walk around and do nothing at all. Do nothing at all, but just be in Disneyland. Skip all that. I mean, don't even get on Casey Jr. Just walk by Casey Jr. and appreciate and see how people are having a good time, and cruise down Main Street and look at the things and look in the windows, like you said, but don't have any kind of like list or agenda or anything at all.
Right. And I love that you use the word be present, because it's something that I say in my personal life and in life in general. It's something I'm a big, big proponent of, is being present. You can be present without saying a word. You can be an active listener. You can be present, and then you can see people that are like not, their attention is not there at all. If you're even in a conversation with them, they're not present, right? Like presence is a big, big deal. And the power of now, man. You're just
I was just gonna say, you're gonna go Eckhart Tolle on me, aren't you?
Yes, I am. The beauty of in that moment, like. Life still happens, but things just go away. Like you're just embracing the joy, because you're surrounded in joy typically. So that's what's so fun, and I agree 100%. Although my number one was your number, maybe three, Main Street vehicle.
Yeah.
I don't think. Oftentimes the reason I had it as underrated is there's so many people that I know that haven't gone to Disneyland near as often as me, just like a handful of times in their life. So when I mention it, almost all of them, to a man or woman, have never ridden a Main Street vehicle. And I'm like, really? It is a fun experience. It's almost more fun than you think it would be. Like it's
way more fun than you think it would
be. you just take it all in, and you're just kind of going up Main Street and looking. You don't have to watch where you step. It is definitely, like, to your point, of feeling of Disneyland, feeling of the original essence of it, and I totally agree. And I was afraid to put it at number one because I didn't, knowing how much you love Main Street vehicles. I thought your rebuttal immediately was going to be, that is not underrated.
Oh, it is underrated. It is. I hear all the time, I've never been on a Main Street vehicle until you told me to, and gosh darn it, you were right. They're amazing. I get that all the time.
I think of I was gonna think of the Tiki Room as well, but it's very, 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 very popular. But yet, so many people, they know about it without having experience.
Yeah,
so funny. Yeah. All right, David. Well, that is that for this show. Anything you want to add to the agenda, to the things that we didn't cover?
Well, I don't know if I'm not optimistic about some of those key things we're talking about in terms of entertainment in the park. I'm not optimistic about Launch Bay, Hyperion, Fantasyland Theater, Tomorrowland Theater. I am not optimistic about that. I don't think they have any direction whatsoever on those things. A little bit, actually. They have a little bit for Fantasyland Theater, but otherwise, it's going to be quite a while before we see any positive direction on those attractions, and so it worries me. It worries me a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. They're just certainly not going to have anything because it just takes so much to put into it. Like there's so much work that is involved in doing it. That being said, you know what? Turn the air conditioning on, open the doors, let people go in there to eat, to relax, to escape the elements. Do something. Like try.
Yeah.
Just I often say this. Yeah. We often say this. Whatever. Just try. Do fine. You don't need a show, but for right now. But you also don't need people sweltering in 100 degrees and no place to escape to get out of it for 4 consecutive months. So I guess we'll see. And there is a lot of news coming up. We have the shareholders meeting in a few weeks.
Can't wait.
Yeah, we have that, which is going to be exciting. We have the Ken Potrock follow-up in a couple more weeks. So there's definitely going to be some fun things to talk about leading up to it, if not what comes out of them moving forward. So we will get into them. But until then,
Fresh baked.
Fresh baked.